All right. Well, good evening, folks. Welcome to our Sunday Night Live, talking about the School of Nursing at Colorado Christian University. There's a few of you still kind of trickling in, so I'm going to tap dance for a little bit by introducing myself. My name is Skip Crust. I am the Associate Director of Admissions here at CCU, and my job is to kick the evening off here with you. We're glad that you can join us. And you'll get to hear tonight from some of our esteemed faculty, our dean, and then also one of our nursing students. We'll talk to you a little bit about what it's like to be at CCU as a nursing student and balancing all of the things that come along with being both a student and also not just a student, but a nursing student, and then student life and all of those things. So as I mentioned, we're glad that you guys are here. I would love to kick off this evening with a word of prayer because Christ is at the center of everything that we do at CCU. It's not just a name, but it really, everything that we do begins and ends with that. So let's begin with a word of prayer. Father, it's our pleasure to come to your presence tonight, and we want to glorify you, even in our discussion online this evening about what our programs look like at CCU for nursing and pre-nursing students. I ask that you would be with our faculty tonight, that you would give them wisdom and insight to what these prospective students are thinking about, what they may be considering as they think about applying to schools. I ask that you would be in the minds and hearts of the students, the prospective students and the families. As they consider where to send their student, I ask that you would give them wisdom, that you would speak to them about whether or not CCU would be the right place and school for them. And I ask that you would allow this evening to speak into that process for them as well. We thank you and we give you all of the glory for all of the good things that you're doing at CCU and around the world. And we ask these things in your name and your blessing on this evening in your name. Amen. Well, I want to begin by introducing Dr. Barbara White, who is the head of our nursing program at CCU on both the traditional undergrad side as well as the adult and graduate school as well. So Dr. White, welcome. And I'll kind of turn this over to you at this point.
Great. Thank you, Skip. And thank you, all of you that have joined us tonight. You're in the process of making a major decision in your life. And if you are feeling God's call to become a nurse, then you are going to enter the most wonderful profession where you are going to see God work in your life and in the lives of your patients on a daily basis, as long as you trust him. You're going to be standing on holy ground because you're going to be working with people in the hospital. You're going to be working with people in the community. Obviously, our students right now are working with literally hundreds of people through drive-ups or vaccination clinics as they are out there interacting with people. This pandemic is historic, so you are entering a profession at a very historic time in the life of not only CCU, but all around the world. So we're here tonight to kind of tell you who we are. And Skip, thank you, because we start everything, every meeting, every class, everything we do starts with prayer. In fact, I will tell you right now, I had a text message from a faculty 20 minutes ago who has a major emergency. I just immediately sent it to the faculty, and I have 15 faculty right now praying for this faculty with an emergency. We stop what we're doing and we pray because we know God is in charge, and it's only by his grace that we can do what we do. So thanks for joining us tonight. I'm going to let the faculty team here just tell you just a little bit about themselves, what they do at CCU. We're going to start with Dr. Mark Parker, who will be one of the first faculty, if you come to CCU, that you will be interacting with in the prerequisite science courses on the campus. Dr. Parker.
Thank you, Dr. White. So I'm not technically part of the nursing program. The way the nursing program is structured, you'll spend your first 2 years at CCU completing prerequisite courses to prepare you for your clinical nursing. I'm not going to speak to the clinical nursing part at all. I'm going to speak to the prerequisites. I will say that I have been teaching pre-nursing students now for about as long as most of you have been alive. And so it's something I'm very, very familiar with. It's also very near and dear to my heart. My wife is a nurse. She's also a nurse practitioner. She sometimes teaches for CCU's nursing school as a clinical instructor. She's participated in teaching in the labs. So the nursing program is very dear to me. But before you get to them, you have to get through me. And I don't say that in a bad way. The prereqs are very challenging. So when you come in as a nursing student, you don't get sort of a year to dip your feet into the sciences. You're kicked into the deep end of anatomy and physiology 1. And then you go into anatomy and physiology 2, which build on 1, and then you go into pathophysiology, and you better have had 1 and 2 down to be able to do the, and so it very much snowballs. And we try and be very intentional in letting you walk in with open eyes that this is going to be a rigorous and challenging couple of years, because you'll do better in your nursing classes if you have that solid foundation. And in order to make it into those clinical courses, you have to maintain a high GPA, and you have to get those prereqs well to do well moving forward. So we're very intentional about keeping you on track and trying to help you succeed. But be aware that it's a rigorous discipline, but we want you there. And it's something that we care very deeply about, is your success. So if you have questions about the prereqs in the first 2 years, I'm your guy. But if you're more interested in the clinical stuff, I will sort of fade to the background and throw it on from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Parker. Okay, and then our interim director of the BSN program, Dr. Jody Panyan. Jody, do you want to say just a couple words?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Jody Panyan, and I just want to welcome you to this presentation. I've been with the nursing program for a little over 10 years or so in various aspects. So I've been involved in a lot of different things. Skills and simulation is one of my passions. So I'm so glad that you are interested in finding out more about the nursing program here at CCU.
Thank you. Then I have 2 faculty here tonight. Thank you. Professor Huddle, you want to start, and then Professor King.
Yes, hello and welcome. I'm Professor Huddle, and I've been teaching for CCU for quite some time as well. And I teach the foundations course as well as the capstone. So I get the joy of seeing the students at the very beginning and at the very end, and the growth and just the expertise that they get throughout the time. It's a blessing to be here.
Thank you. And Professor King.
Hello, my name is Cheryl King, and I have been with CCU for about 6 years now, but I've been teaching as a full-time faculty for about 10 or 11 years now. And my expertise is in OB. I'm a high-risk OB nurse and a NICU nurse in my background. And so I teach the OB course, but I've also taught leadership and ethics and also foundational courses as well. And I'm just excited that you guys are interested in learning more about our program. So looking forward to being able to answer some of those questions.
Great, thank you. And then we have a student with us tonight. Thank you, Jordan, for joining us. Will you tell them a little bit about you?
Sure. Hi, my name's Jordan Saffie. I'm actually a junior at CCU, so I'm in my first year of the nursing program. I'm in my second semester, and yeah, I just hopefully can answer some questions tonight for any students who have questions about what it's like to actually be a student, time management, what clinicals are like, everything like that. I know when I was in my first 2 years of prerequisites, I didn't know anyone in the nursing program, and so I kind of went in with a lot of questions. So hopefully I can, answer some of those tonight. And thank you so much for having me too. I'm excited.
Great, thank you, Jordan. Okay, so if Professor Huddle, if you would share your screen, we'll go through just a few PowerPoint slides, not long, but to just give you an overview that may help then stimulate some of your questions. We'll run through these so that you have an idea of what the nursing program would really look like if you came here to CCU. Our first slide talks about our nursing vision and mission. We really are all about empowering our students to function as nurses and to practice nursing as ministry. You know, some people talk about you're going to live your whole life and then you're going to retire and then you're going to go into full-time ministry. And that's kind of what I grew up with. Nursing is full-time ministry every day of your life. And so we really emphasize the fact that you're ministering to people with God's love. You are the hands and feet of Jesus in everything you do. We're preparing you to be competent, compassionate, moral leaders. You will excel as a servant, a shepherd, a steward, and a scholar so that you can impact the profession and the world. And our baccalaureate program is really founded on Jeremiah 29:11, where God says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." Okay, next slide, please. We have a leadership model. We are teaching you and preparing you to be leaders within the profession. You will see at the very core of that leadership development model is a verse from Psalm 78, 70 to 72, where God chose David, his servant, and he took him from the sheep pen, from tending the sheep. He brought him to be the shepherd of his people, of Jacob, the inheritance of Israel. And David shepherded them with integrity of heart and skillful hands he led them. So everything we do focuses on calling from the Lord, character development for me as a nurse, and competency so that I'm competent in my practice and I can go out there and care for people with strong knowledge base, strong skill set, and great clinical reasoning. Because if you're to walk into my room, which might be soon, I don't know, I'm a lot older than most of you, but we want to make sure that when you walk into that room, you really know what you're doing. And then that you also have the compassionate heart of Jesus. Okay, next slide, please. Our curriculum model, again, is built on calling, character, and competency, nursing as ministry, and integrating our faith into practice. All of those little swirls and blocks are really foundational blocks. The program builds and you learn one thing and you certainly can't forget it. You integrate it into the next and you continue to grow throughout the program. Nursing is not a program where you just take one course and then you can forget about it. And then you take another course and you can forget about it. Nursing is an integration and a synthesis of everything you're going to learn in college. Okay, next slide, please. Biblical integration we do in very, very strategic and intentional ways. There are devotions and prayer at the beginning of each session. Faculty do pray for and with our students. I just shared with you, we pray for each other too. Prayer is really the center of everything we do. We reflect on scripture as it applies to content. We will look at what does the scripture say about building a team? What does it say about handling conflict? What does it say about any content that we're touching on? Because truth, all truth is God's truth. So we have an opportunity to really apply scripture to every topic we cover. Everything's taught from a biblical perspective. We do stress spiritual care. Many nurses, you may have had a family member in the hospital at a point in time, and there's a lot of fear, a lot of vulnerability. You're really dealing with many times difficult diagnosis, life and death, and much of our care is physical, but much of our care is spiritual as well. We know that spiritual needs directly impact physical care. Creating Christian community in all aspects of the university life is really a focus from the day you walk in the door. And our faculty serve as your academic advisors and mentors. Okay, next slide, please. As Skip said at the beginning, we have two pathways. We have a baccalaureate program for our undergraduate students and our adult students. You all take the same prerequisite courses. There's 60 credits. The undergraduate students, you have an opportunity to come in by what we call direct admit, which means you have a guaranteed slot for the junior senior major as long as you maintain your grade point average and meet that admission criteria. All students go through an admission committee review prior to the junior year, and then you take the nursing major courses, 60 credits. You as a CUS college student would take it in 4 semesters, and you'll come out with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing degree. Now that degree allows you to sit for the NCLEX RN licensure exam. That's not a part of your schooling. You sit for that. That's a national exam that you sit for, and you take that exam after you have graduated. And we do everything we can to prepare you adequately, but you have a lot of work to do because you're the one that has to sit there and take the exam when you graduate. Okay, next slide, please. The nursing major is 60 credits. It's 13 courses. I've listed them for you here. We start with a course in transforming care. It's basic professional issues and how we look at nursing from a Christian perspective. Professor Huddle's already told you she's involved in the foundations of practice, where you begin to learn how to think like a nurse and act like a nurse and perform like a nurse. We have a course in health assessment and pharmacology. And then we have many clinical courses where you have theory. You'll be in the skills lab demonstrating skills, and you'll be doing clinical in clinical sites. Children and families is our pediatric course. Maternal newborn is with what Professor King teaches. Mental health. Then we have a senior med surg, which gets into a lot of critical care areas. Evidence-based practice. That's research. That's how do you know what you're supposed to do? And why are you doing it? Is there any research and evidence behind the skills that you're doing, your thinking, things that you're performing? We look at population health, Christian leadership, and finally capstone integration, where you're actually out there transitioning from a student to a registered nurse. Okay, next slide. The major core courses are scheduled in 4 semesters for the campus residential students. And you will see that most semesters, all courses are 8 weeks in length. Most of the time you are taking 2 courses at a time. You cannot take 2 clinical courses at a time. We don't ever do that because you can't do clinical with both courses going at once. But most of the time you're taking 2 courses, except during capstone at the end, where you're doing a lot of clinical hours. So it's a junior senior major. And I'll let Jordan answer a few of those questions as we kind of roll on it. So how much work is it and how many hours do you have to study? It's a lot of work. If you don't know, nursing is one of the hardest majors. If you look into the literature, you'll see nursing is one of the hardest majors that you're ever going to take. And it's documented in the literature because it's scientific. You rely on the scientific natural sciences. You also rely on the behavioral sciences, all the general education. Then there's an art and science of nursing as well. So it's pretty complex. But we human beings are pretty complex. And so you have to know what's going on as you begin to look at people, depending on where you're at. Okay, next slide, please. Typically our 8-week clinical courses, the first 4 weeks, you always have theory 1 day a week, and it's a 4-hour class. So you do not go to class the way a typical college student might go to class on a Monday, Wednesday, or a Tuesday, Thursday. This is 1 4-hour class a week. You have lab simulation 1 day a week. You will have a lab competency at the end of that lab experience, where we allow you to have some remediation and retakes, but we want to make sure that you are safe before you go into clinical sites. There's also medicine calculation exams where you have to take tests on how do I calculate drugs? How do I do that well if I have to give something? Those little stars mean that those are kind of like stop out points. You've got to pass things at that point for us to allow you to go into then the last part of the course, which again is theory 1 day a week. You'll have clinical practicum. You'll be out there in the clinical 2 days a week, and then you'll have your final exam. And we use a national standard predictor exam service called ATI. All the clinical courses have exams that are nationally standardized, where you'll be able to see, how did I do with all the rest of the nursing students across the nation in terms of my maternal child knowledge or my pediatric knowledge. Okay, next slide, please. Here's a picture of our simulation center. If some of you have been to campus through preview, you may have been over there and seen the mannequins. And we have a beautiful simulation center not far, it's 2 miles from campus. And we do high fidelity simulation with the mannequins that actually talk to you. And then and Dr. Panyan this is her expertise. She's done her doctoral study in this. And we know this is where students really put everything together, really learn the critical thinking and clinical reasoning that allows them to go safely into the hospital settings. And the next picture, I think, is related to clinical practicums. Those are any day of the week, any shift. We do have students on nights. We do have students on weekends. It may not be right close to campus, although there is a hospital 2 miles from campus, but we use all the hospitals in the Denver metro area. So sometimes it's a drive to get there. So you might guess that you need to have transportation. We do suggest that you have a car rather than a bicycle, because you do need to be able to get to those hospital settings when you're scheduled to be there. Okay, you want to finish up the slides for us, Tammy? The next one. Faculty have recently written a book. This is our new textbook, just published this last year, Nursing as Ministry. We all have a chapter in there, and it's a way that faculty have been able to share their expertise. And this is our actual one of the textbooks that we incorporate into the program. Next slide is just a summary. Nursing is truly a scientific discipline. It's hard. You've got to know what you're doing. If you walk into a patient's room with some diagnosis, you're expected to look up that diagnosis before you get in there. If there are lab tests that they're either scheduling or have scheduled, you need to know, how do those lab tests impact that disease? What's going on? What's going on with medications? It is a scientific discipline where the knowledge is critical. But we know here at CCU, it's also a sacred calling, because when you're really doing the work God's calling you to do, it is truly a joy. And so the last slide is just some pictures of some of our current students for such a time as this. We hope that if you decide to come to CCU, it truly will be a joy-filled experience, and it is such a time as this for you. So thanks. Thanks for listening. Okay, we'll take some questions.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. White. My name is Alyssa. I am enrollment counselor here at CCU, and I'll kind of be moderating the question and answer portion for you guys. If you can use that chat feature, either the chat or the Q&A would probably be best, but if you guys can put that in there, I will ask those questions of the faculty and staff. But as we maybe advertise, it is very unscripted, so we definitely want you guys to get whatever questions that we can answered. Dr. White, like I said, is the best one to ask these questions of. She knows all things nursing and program, both in seat in our online program through the adult and graduate studies program. So yeah, awesome. Does anybody have any questions to kind of start out? Dr. White, I had a question earlier today at one of our events, but one of the students asked about maybe integration or some maybe missionary opportunities for our students in Spanish-speaking countries. And maybe, I don't know if you could speak a little bit to maybe that and how our nurses might be able to do study abroad or potentially mission trips.
We have talked about that frequently. We are just starting with the students on the campus. It has, it's been a challenge for our adult students, because our adult students are working and they go a longer period of time. So it's difficult, but our campus students, we do on campus, CCU to the world, many, many mission trips. And some of them are in the summer. And so absolutely, we are open to that. We would love some student leadership in that area. And I know we have faculty who are ready to put that in place.
Wonderful, awesome. Anna Marie asked, do we have a separate application for the nursing program, or how does that work?
Dr. Panyan, you want to take that, or do you want me to take that one?
Go ahead and take that one.
Okay. When you come in, if you are a direct admit student, and we will take up to 48 direct admit students in freshman year every year, then you will definitely have a slot as long as you have passed Dr. Parker's anatomy and physiology classes, you've maintained your 3.0 science average, okay, and you've met the admission criteria that's identified on the website. We do have a review committee, which Dr. Panyan's just been involved in for some of our other students, where you do have an interview. We look at all of your transcripts. We look at your cumulative grade point average, and we ask you some questions, okay? So there's still a review interview process, but you do have a slot in that program as you move forward. Now, there are some also competitive students that come to campus, or some transfer students. They may come in later. They may come in as a sophomore, or they may come in with a different major and then decide, wow, I'd really like to be a nurse, and they do really well. So Dr. Parker, do you want to talk about that? We do have some of that going on.
Absolutely. So we have a fair number of students who decide maybe a little bit later, maybe they initially thought, you know, I'm interested in medicine. And as they learn more, they realize that no, God is calling them more to the ministry of nursing. We have students that are transfer students that have been at other universities, but now are really excited about being able to study within a Christian community. And so we have a number of transfers and major changes that result in students sort of sliding into the program. And we have a wonderful advisor in our Life Direction Center who is very skilled at helping you sort of figure out where you are and where you need to be. And we're able to do some really interesting things, combining classes on campus and in person with some online classes that are actually offered through Dr. White's faculty. Maybe you can go back and catch up with anatomy and physiology, or take your genetics class, that sort of thing. So those options absolutely exist. And we've traditionally had a few of those competitive spots available for students who maybe didn't have as high a GPA coming into their undergraduate year, but worked really hard and made all the benchmarks they needed to apply. And so we've had a few spots available for that as well. And students seem to have done really well with what we call that competitive admissions track. Maybe they didn't know how well they needed to do in high school, but now that they get to college and God is calling them to be a nurse, they bear down and make all the benchmarks and then make wonderful nurses. So, you know, those opportunities absolutely exist.
Wonderful. So if a student does not get into the direct admission program, there is a chance for them to apply potentially for that competitive track. Is there a deadline for them to do that after they take their prereqs for the first 2 years? Is that correct, Dr. White?
Yes, as Dr. Parker said, there are direct admit slots that we take from day one, from when they come in. And then it just depends upon whether or not we have enough additional slots, or if some in the direct admit. We've had that happen, I think, too, as well, Dr. Parker. They get into some of these science classes and say, whoa, this really maybe not what I should be doing, or maybe this isn't really for me. And so it appears at this point in time, yes, we definitely have some competitive slots available, as well as some transfer students that come in a little later than freshman year. Absolutely.
Awesome, great.
And depending on where you are in the program, we've had students that were competitive students who excelled in their prereqs early on in the program. So you get an A in A&P1 and you get an A in A&P2, and all of a sudden you're right on with all those benchmarks we require. We do occasionally move competitive students into an open direct admit spot, so that even after their freshman year, they may now have a spot in the nursing program. You don't necessarily have to wait until the end of your sophomore year either.
Great, awesome. Because I definitely know too, there's a lot of flexibility where people are like, yeah, I want to be a nurse. And then they decide, oh no, this is definitely not the track that I want to do, that maybe have one of those direct admission spots. So you're not totally out of it if you don't get one of those direct admission spots as a freshman. Dr. White, you talked a little bit about the NCLEX and ATI and how that kind of works, but I had a student ask about pass rates for the NCLEX and also if we have any review courses on campus.
We do. Yes, we do. ATI, like Kaplan, like HESI, there are many national companies that have testing that nursing schools utilize, their national standard tests, preparing students for the NCLEX. And yes, we do. Part of the process of ATI and the package that we utilize with our students is we actually have a 3-day NCLEX review course that we give to our seniors. Professor Huddle, do you want to speak to that? Because you're in charge of that and you know a little bit about that.
Sure. So it's a 3-day intense course that is wrapping up all of the information that students have learned and really solidifying the knowledge that the students have. We also work with ATI throughout the whole capstone process, and students also have an opportunity for 4 to 5 weeks after graduation to continue that work with ATI prior to taking their NCLEX. So there's a lot of review and a lot of information and a lot of support from CCU, the nursing program, as well as through the ATI.
We know consistently, and I don't think this data has changed in several years, it takes about 6,000 questions. The students themselves doing about 6,000 questions to get ready for the NCLEX exam. Programs, ours included, attempt to give students about 3,000 of those questions within the curriculum. Professor King, you're bringing several into your course on a weekly basis, correct? You have, I'm not sure how many you have them do.
I have them do somewhere around 15 to 30, depending on the content, to
Okay.
help them beyond their course exams. So they're doing additional practice questions that are part of their class participation grades, so that they are actually doing more to give them more practice of teasing through those questions and really learning how to critically think and do the clinical reasoning that is required to be a nurse.
And then go ahead.
I was just going to say, we also start the ATI process very early on. So we start you getting used to being exposed to NCLEX questions. So from the very beginning when you start, so your first 3 or 4 months are fairly critical in the nursing program, that you get used to the style of questions, how to test, and you start working with ATI right away.
And each of our clinical courses has a practice assessment, a proctored assessment that the students take to kind of benchmark them against the national standards for that particular course, to see how they would do if they were to sit for just that aspect of the course right at that moment in time for NCLEX. So we use that as another tool to help prepare students for their final NCLEX practice or final NCLEX exam.
Awesome. And Dr. White, did you say what our pass rate was? I'm sorry, I might have missed that.
No, it's been running in the 80s. It varies every year depending on how many students take it. That's one of the things we're looking at right now. Faculty will be looking at again in a meeting this very week in terms of our NCLEX pass rates. We have always been we've always met the standards that we've needed to meet.
I think it's important to point out as well that that's the first time pass rate as well, is it not?
It is. It's the first time you take the test. Some of the other professions, when they actually take national exams, have an opportunity to take it 2 or 3 or 4 times. You can take an NCLEX exam 2 or 3 or 4 times, but the pass rate is first time takers. Mm-hmm. So you need to be ready to take it, and you need to be confident that you're going to do well on it.
Yes, that pass rate too is about 10% higher than most other schools. So they're really preparing you guys. So I definitely can attest to that. There's a question, Dr. Parker, about cadavers on campus. Can you speak to that and
I can. So I've been fortunate enough to be able to build a cadaver program here at CCU, which is unusual in a program as small as ours. It's a real honor to be able to study God's creation at that level in an institution such as ours, where we're honoring God's creation by studying it more deeply. So yes, during your anatomy and physiology program, you'll have the opportunity to view cadavers at various stages during your anatomy labs. And a few outstanding students are then invited to take an advanced anatomy course where they actually assist me in the preparation of the cadavers for viewing by undergraduate students. It's really challenging right now with social distancing, and we have a very small facility, but we still try to provide that experience. So very lucky to be able to do that at an institution of this size and nature.
Wonderful. Maybe Jordan, you can speak to this, but a lot of students are asking kind of time requirements. Can I have a job? What does that look like? Kind of a day in the life of a nursing student. So that would be awesome if you could answer.
Yeah, so I don't currently have a job right now. They kind of warned us going in that nursing is going to be like the main priority, that your classes, your clinicals, lab, simulation, everything like that is the #1 priority. And so with that comes a lot of sacrifice, I guess, in time management. And so I've definitely seen that, I don't know, like other friends who are like business majors or comm majors or something like that will be going out and doing other things. But for me and my nursing friends, we kind of have to decide, okay, we can do that in 2 years. It's more so a sacrifice of, what's more important to you, I guess. But for me, I worked 2 jobs this past summer in preparation, knowing that I probably wouldn't be able to work during the school year. And so a lot of planning went into that. And with clinicals too, it's very difficult to have maybe a full-time job with clinicals being random times during the week and everyone has different assignments, but it's not impossible. I know a lot of girls actually have jobs in my cohort, but some people just find that it's not something that they want to fit in.
Dr. Panyan, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, this is a really important question. And we actually, in the nursing program, we recommend that you don't work during the program. And I know that's could be a financial hardship, but Jordan touched on the sacrifice of what it really takes to get through the program. And so it's really a decision that you have to make, but we prefer that you don't work. And part of that has to do with clinicals. Once you get through a certain portion of the program, you will start going into clinicals. And your clinicals are 12-hour shifts. They can be 2 days, 3 days a week. They can be on weekends. So we have relationships with hospitals all around the city, but it's rather unpredictable. We don't know what placements we're going to get. So we want you to be very flexible when you come into the program. And so it's best overall if you can just focus on your studies and not have to juggle hours with working.
And I would like to add to that as well, just on what Dr. Panyan said. My OB group that starts their clinical experiences this week, we found out last week that their clinicals were changing. And instead of it being on Monday, Tuesday, they changed in the hospital setting to Tuesday, Wednesday. So if you're working a job, you have to have something that's very flexible to be able to accommodate, because you need to be in those clinical experiences to be able to fulfill that transformation of what you're learning in the classroom plus what you're learning in the simulation center into the clinical setting to be successful as a nurse.
Great, awesome. There was some questions about chapel expectations. Most students, they're required to get that 180 hours of chapel credits. Does that change for nurses since they are in clinicals and things like that, their junior and senior year?
Yes, that changes as they enter the major. It's half the number of chapel hours and half the number of ministry hours that are accomplished during the freshman and sophomore year. And then those are waived during the junior and senior year. And again, that's because of clinical time, simulation time in the lab. Those things occur during the week. And nursing students are truly so busy that was one of the things when we knew we were going to have campus students. They're not going to be able to attend the chapel twice a week or those things. So those are waived during the junior and senior year. They're doing plenty of ministry hours, just in a little different framework than what they were doing as freshmen and sophomores.
Awesome. And there is also too, so there's about 30 chapels a semester, and you, in order to get those 180, you really only need to go to about 20. So if you really don't necessarily want to worry about chapel your junior and senior year, you can push all of those to kind of your freshman and sophomore year too, which might help you get it ahead so you don't have to be as cognizant of that as well. Dr. White, someone asked about a minor in biblical studies and what that might kind of look like for a nursing student, or any kind of minor, I guess, in general.
Minors are available, certainly, to nursing students. I don't know that anyone has really asked me that question before, because their time in nursing class and in lab and in clinicals are so extensive that it might be difficult to fit in a biblical minor if the courses were taken like on the campus. Correct me, Dr. Parker, if I'm incorrect here. I mean, those classes are traditionally during the days, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 15 weeks. A nursing student would not be able to do that. However, if they were taking some courses in the College of Adults, those are online courses in biblical studies, something like that might be possible for a very motivated student who might have the time to do it. We certainly would not prohibit that if they had the time to do it.
The other thing to keep in mind that the 2 years of prereq include 4 courses in biblical studies and theology, and that 12 credit hours is what we call an emphasis in the undergraduate world. So they're already at an emphasis. They need to pick up 2 other classes beyond that. And so maybe you have an instance where somebody has done some dual enrollment before they came to CCU, something like that. Maybe they've already got one of those, or they took it in a summer, or they took it online, something like that. Then they'd only need to fit those other 2 classes in during those first 2 years. I think with my experience seeing my wife go through these programs and teaching these programs and that sort of thing, I would not recommend adding anything to your nursing curriculum. But if you could knock it out, and Jordan is nodding vigorously, if you could add 2 more courses during your first 2 years, then it would be possible. But it would require some careful planning, I think.
Or possibly summers, because we do have the summers off. And the university does offer courses in the summer, online courses. Yeah. Wise advice.
That's a really good question. Maybe you can speak on like some of those students that maybe have come in and have done dual enrollment, or maybe gotten their AA before they enter CCU. Can they directly go into their clinical / the last 2 years of their nursing program? I guess how long might that take?
That all depends on the student. As Dr. Parker has said, or as maybe it was you, Skip, we have an advisor on campus. Right now it's Rachel Metcalf. She works with all the students in their program, looks at their credits. And so it all depends on where they come in. If they come in with no credit, maybe they come in with dual credit, they may have enough credit for the whole first year. But have they taken the right courses? They may have credit, but it may not be the courses that are required. So it's really an individual kind of academic advising as to how that would work. We bring students in from the campus into the major in the fall of every year. So we are working right now with students who are going to go through that interview, application, review process that will be joining us as juniors in the fall. We only take them in once a year in the fall.
Great, wonderful. And for you students as well, we have an event coming up in April called Scholarship Recognition Weekend. And prior to that event, you guys will fill out pre-registration forms, which Rachel will look at for all of the nursing students of what credits that you are coming in with and kind of plug them into your degree plan. And then she will help you guys register for your classes. And usually she meets with you too in the first couple weeks to a month of school, sees where you're at, you go over that degree plan, all of those good things. So if you do come in with dual credit, don't worry, you will definitely get credit for those. And she'll kind of give you a better idea of what that kind of looks like for you. The next question is, do students become practicing RNs directly after graduating and taking the test? Or is there further school that's required?
Dr. Panyan, you want to answer that?
Yes, after you have graduated, you'll take the NCLEX, and if you pass the NCLEX, then you are eligible. Once you receive your license, you are eligible then to apply for a job at a hospital as a new graduate. Most hospitals around the city run new graduate programs, so they will then take over and you'll have some training and mentoring for 6 to 8 months at a hospital. So yes, the bottom line with that is you are eligible to start out as a nurse after you pass the NCLEX exam.
Historically, also, we see many of our students will have a position kind of waiting for them once they pass the NCLEX. And some of it comes in because they've done some externships through the hospitals and they've got a relationship with the hospital already. But many of our students will already have a position upon graduation, just depending on when they pass the NCLEX.
Great, that kind of leads into my next question of how do specialties work in the School of Nursing in terms of maybe clinicals, or how does somebody kind of determine what they want to specialize in?
We train you as a generalist. So you will take classes in mental health, you'll take classes in OB. However, your NCLEX is based on being a generalist nurse. So during your clinical, sometimes, for an example, in adult health, there's an adult health 1 class and adult health level 2. Sometimes in level 2, students make the request, or in capstone, I would like to do critical care. I'd like to be placed in the emergency room. We certainly try to give you that kind of exposure, but we do want you to know that you are not trained specifically to work in a specialty. That will eventually come as you get out and you start working as a new grad and you get some experience as a nurse. Then you have the opportunity to apply for specialties. Sometimes hospitals in your capstone, which is your very last class as a senior, where you're working 180 hours or so with your preceptor in a hospital, sometimes students are very blessed to be able to be placed in the NICU or a level 1 or 2 nursery. Sometimes students get to go and they get to follow a nurse in the emergency room, but that isn't always the case. So again, it has to do with flexibility. We work with our partners in the community, and we try the best we can to place you in positions that you have an interest in. The other part of that question is that students come in and a lot of times they want to be a pediatric nurse or a OB nurse or whatever that is. But there's value in every single placement that you have. So that kind of, a lot of times students will change their mind depending on what kind of exposure they've had in their clinical experience.
Great. Dr. Panyan, maybe you can talk a little bit about clinicals. Somebody asked, are they 12-hour shifts? Do you get paid during this time? What does that look like?
Well, it's a good question. They are 12-hour shifts. So the hospitals are traditionally on a 12-hour shift. Just that's what nurses work. So they like us to have our students come in, and you partner with a preceptor. So our students will work right alongside of the nurse, and that's 12 hours. I wish we could say that you get some payment for that, but you don't. So you will be working a lot of clinical hours as you go through this program, but that's all part of your education. And your salary comes after you graduate.
Wonderful. Awesome.
We might mention too, Dr. Panyan, hospital shifts are 12 hours, but our students do quite a bit in the community through the public health departments, through the jails, through any kind of a community, through the healthcare industries. So we do have population health, where we look at healthcare issues for the entire population. Instead of having one patient, you have an aggregate. And those experiences tend to be more 8-hour shifts rather than the 12-hour shifts out in the community. A lot of community-based care, clinics and things like that. Okay, so you will have a variety of experiences.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We try to work with, for an example, the 9 News Health Fairs. We work with Jeffco Public Health Department. We do some things at the Homeless Coalition. So we do have a lot of placements around the community when it comes to community health or health promotion, health prevention. So I think you'll get, I think you'll be surprised how much experience you could get working in the community.
Great. This is a question, kind of a little bit of a 2-part question, but kind of what happens in the nursing program if maybe I don't pass a class, and what is kind of the average grade point average that I need to have in order to stay in the program?
I'll go ahead and address that, and Tammy, you may want to jump in here too. We like you to maintain the highest grade point average you possibly can. A 3.0 is certainly a good place to be. If for some reason you don't pass a class, we do put you on a progression plan. So that allows you to maybe come back when that course is offered again. That could be with a different cohort. So you may start with one cohort. If something should happen and you didn't pass a class, it may be that you have to attach to another cohort. However, we give you the opportunity to go back and audit the courses that led up to the course that you didn't pass. So that's really an opportunity that this school gives you. It's like almost taking free classes in a way. You get to sit in that class, you participate in the labs. We do encourage you to take the exams. That's all practice work to get you back up to speed to pick up with the class that you left off. Dr. White, do you have anything else to say about that?
Professor Huddle, did you want to add anything to that?
I just wanted to add that for each individual class, you have to pass with 75% or higher. And our exams are the primary source of that 75%. So you have to pass the exam total with 75 before we even add any other assignments to that. So 75 is the lowest to be able to pass a class.
Correct. That's correct. That's an exam average. And that's pretty much the standard of all universities that we're aware of here in the state of Colorado. If you get straight A's on all the other things, if you have a paper or a case study or some other thing that you turn in and you get great grades on that, but if your test scores are below 75%, then you will not pass the class and you will need to come back. We do give you grace, because we allow you to come back and take it again. And all those courses that Dr. Panyan has talked about in terms of auditing, there's no charge for those. You've already passed them. So you're really given a tremendous opportunity to come back and review and remediate and then move forward. And hopefully at that point in time, we counsel you, we tutor you, and is it testing anxiety? Is it that you don't have time to study because you're too busy working? We really work with you to find out what the issues are, and we're certainly working with you so that you can be successful second time around. But here again, there's only so much we as faculty can do. You've got to do it as a student. So, but we work with you very closely, and we want you to succeed.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. Another question is a CNA certificate part of the nursing program, or is that something that you might want to complete prior to coming into the program?
Tammy, you want to answer that? Yeah.
It's not required to come into the program. It is helpful if you have your CNA, but it's not a requirement. And after health assessment and foundations, you can actually apply to take the exam and become a CNA after those 2 courses.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Great. Wonderful. Jordan, this question is maybe for you, and you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but kind of how much free time do nurses have, or the nursing students have, and do they room together, or do you try to room with other majors? How does that work for you?
So I actually room with 2 other nursing students, and then an elementary ed major, which is kind of random, but she likes it. She comes to us with any health problems, so it's kind of fun for her. But you don't have to room with other nursing students. I actually don't live on campus. I lived on campus the first year and my second year. And then this 3rd year, I found a townhouse a couple miles away from the school, which was great. But yeah, you don't have to room with nursing students. You can room with whoever. I actually recommend it though. I think that it's been really helpful. Me and my nursing roommates, I guess, will sometimes, like the night before an exam, we'll be in the kitchen like reading our study guides to each other or practicing note cards or something like that. So that's really helpful. And then as far as like free time goes, it really just depends on how you manage your time, I guess. So I like to try to have a little bit of free time throughout the week. I'm a part of the Nurses Christian Fellowship group that we have on campus. And so we meet every other Tuesday and we do a Bible study together. And then of course I try to keep Sundays as free as possible to be able to go to church or maybe visit my family who lives 45 minutes away. But things like that. And I mean, not every week is jam-packed. And so when you do have some free time, it is nice to maybe go out to dinner or do something like that. But as long as you manage your time, get all of your to-do lists done, you can make time to, do other things. But yeah.
Great. That's great knowledge to know. This is another kind of combo question that I'm going to ask, but kind of how can high school students be preparing to come in for the pre-nursing majors, or anything that they can do? Is the HESI required? Do we require that? And maybe how many total? I think you said, Dr. White, is it 48 spots that we have for students coming, at least direct admission spots that we have?
We have a few more of those, but yes, basically we are on a cap from the State Board of Nursing, and we have 48. We can do a little more, but yes, that's true. What are your recommendations, Professor King and Professor Huddle, in terms of getting ready? Or even you, Dr. Panyan, what do you would suggest that they do?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question. Maybe we should ask Jordan that question from her experience as coming into this versus what ours are as existing nurses. Jordan, why don't you start out with that first, and then we can add to what you have to say.
Yeah, sure. So I actually took some classes at my community college before going in to even my freshman year of college. So I had like 18 credits already. And I think that was extremely helpful in preparing me for the workload of college and just the advanced classes, I guess. And so I had already taken my biology course. And so I had that basis for me, which was good. And then I think for my 2 years doing my prereqs, my freshman and sophomore year, I basically prepped for the nursing program by just making my classes and my academics like the #1 priority for me. So my whole attitude was, you know, every single class matters. I'm going to do my best for every single class, even if it's not related necessarily to nursing. So like my literature class or my world religions class, every single one of those was going to help me get into the nursing program, even if it wasn't necessarily related. And so kind of just changing the mindset to, okay, I'm going to make sure I do my best on every class because this is going to help me prepare for my future. And it honestly was very helpful because I knew a lot of people who didn't necessarily see it that way were kind of like, well, these are just the gen eds. I can, you know, breeze through them. And then when it came time our sophomore year to apply to the actual nursing program, they're kind of in a frenzy, I guess, figuring out like, well, now I need to up my GPA. And so I think the best thing that someone can do going in is thinking freshman year, every single class is important and every single class is going to prepare me for what I need to do. So, and I'm glad that I did that, but yeah, that's what I would recommend.
And Jordan, why don't you talk about a little bit about the nursing program and the fact that each course builds upon it and that we're asking you to retain that information and how that's different from what you experienced in high school.
Oh yeah. No, that's actually been kind of incredible. I was talking to Professor Huddle about this a little bit, that in other classes, like in my prerequisites, I'd kind of, you know, learn it and then completely forget, I guess, the next year. But going into nursing, even from last semester, I'm in Adult 1 now, and then I'm also in transformational care. And so Adult 1 has been really cool because I have gotten to see, oh, like I remember this from foundations or health assessment or mental health, and everything kind of combines. And I also think that the studying too is a little bit different in the nursing program where you're thinking about building things on top of each other. And oh, so I learned that this, you know, these respirations are bad and that means this now. And I learned this in health assessment and now I'm seeing it again in Adult 1. And so it's definitely important to, while you're studying, remembering that I need to know this information for the rest of my life. And so it's actually pretty helpful when you go into studying thinking that way, because then you remember it for the exams, and remember it after that, which is pretty incredible.
And I think the other piece that I would just add to that is that it's not only the nursing courses that we're asking you to keep and retain that information, but it's a lot of what Dr. Parker talked about, the anatomy and physiology, the pathophysiology. If you have a strong foundation and you can retain that information, it's going to make nursing school so much easier.
Yeah, Anatomy 1, Anatomy 2, and Patho were very helpful. And then even microbiology has been really helpful too as well, especially with, I started micro right when COVID hit. We had to go home and I finished my micro class. And so that was very applicable.
Great. Well, I think this is going to be our last question for the evening. But a student is asking, is testing different for those students that maybe live out of state rather than the people that are in Colorado? Is there anything different that they need to be doing, or are there different requirements that states have? Is the student talking about licensure in another state, or they're talking about getting into our program? Yep, I think that's how, like, so if I come to CCU and I do the program here, am I licensed to go to another state, or is there any other additional requirements?
Okay, thank you, that's helpful.
The licensing exam is a national exam, and we do have students that come to CCU and take their coursework here and graduate with their degree, and then they move to another state. In this case, it might be moving back home. You can apply to take the licensure exam in another state. Our program prepares any graduate to sit for the RN licensing exam in any state of the nation. Okay, so they don't have to go to another, they don't have to take anything else. They don't have to go to any other courses. They don't have to complete any other coursework. It's a national licensing exam. They might, if they take it here in Colorado, many states, it's called compact states, 33 of them across the nation, have what's called multi-state licenses, and you can work in a variety of states with the license. Other states are just one state license. So that's really a state board issue. But the educational program itself prepares students to take licensure in any state of the nation. Okay? Because it's a national exam. You're going to get the same
Wonderful.
exam if you take it in Texas or California or here in Colorado.
Awesome.
Okay?
Great. Thank you. For those students that maybe did not get their questions answered, your enrollment counselor will be a great contact for that. So if you do have additional questions that didn't get answered in this time with us, please email your enrollment counselor. We also track these questions too. So if it didn't get answered, we'll try to reach out to you as well. But they'll be the great point of contact for you. But that's pretty much all that we have for our time tonight, guys. But I am so grateful for each and every one of the families that joined tonight. Hopefully that was great insight for you to learn about a little bit more about the nursing program, meet the faculty, students, things like that. And I am so grateful for Dr. White and your staff for joining us as well. I don't know if you have a few more words that you want to say to kind of wrap everything up.
I just want to say that this is a major decision in your life. Where am I going to go to college? And what do I want to do? So I want you to know that we're going to be praying for you. Our faculty team meets every Monday morning for prayer. So tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, we're going to specifically pray for you, those of you that were on here tonight, that the Lord will clearly show you, where should I go to school? Should I be a nurse? And is this the right place for me? And I just hope and pray that indeed, if you really want to be a nurse, if you're really called to be a nurse, I can assure you CCU is a great place to come, but you need to be where God wants you to be, and he will clearly show you that. So we're going to pray for you tomorrow morning and trust that God's going to show you exactly the right place to come. And we're hoping it's going to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dr. White. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Again, reach out to your EC if you have more questions, but we're so thankful to have this evening with you guys, and we will see you hopefully on campus soon. Talk to you later. Bye.